China will be the largest Christian nation by far at the end of this century. You heard it here second. I didn't say first. Just listen to a Vox Day podcast at unauthorized.tv. Big fan of that guy. voxday.net, unauthorized.tv. Not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you right now. You know, over on unauthorized, you know, the guys over there, Razor Fist is over there, they don't pull punches. So if you can't have your thoughts challenged, not a good place to be. He made a good point though. He's like, man, the persecution of Christians in China, it was heavy years ago. It's not as heavy now. What does that remind you of? What does that remind you of? Now, he didn't say that, but it reminds me of Rome. You know what I'm saying? So slowly, because God wins, dude. God wins. God knows where he has... God knows where people are open-hearted for him. And just read your old school Bible. The old books. Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah. Ezekiel, I'm in the middle of Hosea now. Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Daniel. God wasn't taking too kindly on Israel and Judah who were turning from him. And God then destroyed those places. Is he going to do the same with the United States? Well, we're turned away from him, so ultimately, absolutely. When, where, and how, I don't know. So who was persecuted in China for many years by Mao and the commie clowns? Christians, 100%. Who was persecuted in Stalin era? Christians, 100%. It's interesting because some of the most hardcore Christians I've ever met were Russian Baptists. They had a Russian Baptist church in Bridgewater, Virginia. Some of those guys are clients. Interesting people, man. Tough to negotiate with. I'll tell you that right now. Good people, good solid people. They did what they promised, but man, tough to negotiate with. You know, they said, I'm not giving up a dime if I don't have to, because they know what it's like not to have a dime. Anyway, so what's even the Bible? I can't remember, Matthew, I think. Because remember, I think, 90% of Mark is Matthew, essentially. Yeah, that's right. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's your Gospels. 90% of Mark is basically Matthew. So Matthew is the primo of the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in terms of the first book, the New Testament. And then Matthew is significantly larger than Mark. Anyway, long story short, I think it's Matthew, where when you go to a town and they don't accept you, dust off your sandals and go someplace else. So the West is not accepting of Christianity anymore. That's just a fact. Will it be dominated by Muslims? Maybe. I don't care. The West, I'm talking Europe right now. United States, we've still got a pretty strong Christian culture here, at least the South. How much of that's legitimate, or is it just kind of lip syncing? I can't speak to that. Because you're looking at the biggest lip syncer there is right here. You're looking at them right now. But I don't know, you know what I'm saying? In the North, it's pretty much done. And in the West, there's lots of Christians out there for sure. So we still got a ways to go. But, we have a 330 million population. China's got 1.3 billion and shrinking, but still 1.3 billion. China recognizes, in my opinion, that the West is doomed. No other way around that. But China also recognizes, I don't know, but I mean, you can see, after Mao, we had what's his name, Deng Xiaoping. That was the guy before it, Xi. Who was the guy after? Zemin, Z-E-M-I-N? I can't remember. The guy said to be rich is glorious. So they had their quasi-capitalistic phase. This big government, big state, fascistic, come together, increase people's wealth. Not significant, significantly, but not relative to what we have, but certainly increase their wealth. And then Xi Jinping, so then we had Zemin, I can't remember his name. Some of you guys, China scholars, know who I'm talking about. I just remember his big glasses. He looked kind of like the guy from North Korea, big glasses like that. Everyone had big glasses like that in the 80s. Then he had I'm drawing a blank. The guy before Xi, I just said his name too, Xi Jinping, something like that. And he was kind of like moderating that to some regard, it seemed like. Now you got Xi right now, who's definitely more austere. It's not saying he's a good guy, he's still a commie, you know what I'm saying? I mean, how many people suffered under his rise to the top? Do people not remember having Bo? You remember Bo and his crazy wife partnering these guys in London? Yeah, I mean, that's what, he had corruption all the way down the Chinese Communist Party. And Xi, not saying he's not corrupt, but he said, can't have that. We need to be more austere and more righteous. And these princelings, the rich kids of the spoiled kids of the rich Chinese Politburo members, driving around their freaking fancy schmancy good time rock and roll cars, while the poor Chinese are like, what the hell's happening? Xi said, enough of that. And he took over, I'm sure with blood, but he took over. Anyway, so he's making things more, I hate to say Maoish. In some way it is, probably to keep the West at, you're like, oh my goodness. The West guys say, they're commies, they're coming over here. But what happens here is, the Christians in China haven't died, they're still there. Christians in Rome didn't die, they're still there. Now, whether or not, like Constantine or whatever his name was, was he a legit, was he real? I don't know, all that stuff. But, Christianity became supreme in Rome. That's probably not the greatest thing that ever happened. Why? Because Christianity then got saturated with political infighting and insanity. Just look at the story of Luther, obviously the Catholic Church. All these guys are corrupt. How dare you say Martin Luther is corrupt? Okay, you don't know your history. It's just a fact. Anyway, was there a bunch of Christians who weren't corrupt? Absolutely. Tons of them. But they were dwarfed by, the political ambitious, who just said, if I want to be politically ambitious, Thomas More, things of this nature. If I want to strive to great heights, I got to be ambitious, which means I have to see some heads roll. Anyway, so what we have here, the same things happen in China. The Christian church isn't dead, it's growing. And it's growing because it hasn't been corrupted yet. And as such, more and more people turn to it because it hasn't been corrupted. You can kind of see the same with like the Muslims, actually, why that's appealing to like blacks in America back in the 60s, and to some regard still today, because they haven't seen the Muslims being corrupted, because there's not enough Muslims out here in which to corrupt what would be the Islamic faith there. There's not enough of them, you see what I'm saying? So they just see, the Muslims that they see are what they think is pure compared to the corrupt Christians. You can't blame them, frankly. Say, look at what these Christians have done. I'm talking about the South and, the huge Muslim population in Philadelphia and whatnot. But I'm not saying there's Muslims in the South, but you can see why many blacks would turn on Christianity. They're saying, wait a second, this is what Christians are supposed to be, and yet here they were discriminating against me? That's not Christianity. I don't want anything to do with that. Well, look over here. Here's non-corrupted Muslims who actually practice what they preach. Can't blame them. Can't blame it at all. And then you have, like that guy from LSU, Chris Jackson, obviously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, all these guys. They say, now whether or not they're all legit, I don't know. I'm not here to judge. Do some go to, maybe Kyrie Irving for some example. He says, look, these guys, they're not corrupted like the people that I was raised around with are. And that's the downfall of Christianity. It gets corrupted. I mean, look at our own Pope, man, for the Catholicism. I mean, the guy's a clown. Come on. Anyway, so the point being is you can't blame people for turning away from the faith when they see that the faith has been corrupted. You know what I'm saying? Just look at Catholicism. I mean, you have all these priests raping little kids, and the cardinals, not only did they not do anything, but the cardinals actually sometimes were even part of that. You know what I'm saying? And so when you see that a faith that gives, credence to a Jesus is molesting little kids, you're going to turn away from that because the corruption destroys the church. But when the church is on the outside looking in, the corrupt don't join it, because the reason the corrupt join it is because they want to be part of the powerful. All right? And so in China, the Communist Party is obviously corrupt as all can be, without question. So the alternative to the Communist Party is going to be what? Well, Christianity, man. Christianity, because it's not dead. It'll never die. Christianity will never die. And so the Chinese people say, you know something, these commies, screw them. Which is why Xi had to do what he had to do, because he could see. I mean, look, yes, I mean, look, I'm not an expert on a Chinese scholar. I don't need to be, but I can be observant. You can see a mile away. He's like, dude, we're sacrificing the glory of our stupid revolution under Mao because these freaking corrupt government officials. And so we got to get rid of the corrupt government officials, or else we're going to lose legitimacy, and the people are going to turn on us. Now, I think he will ultimately fall, absolutely, or fail, maybe fail for sure, you know, because people don't want, when you're in power, you're always going to be corrupted. That's all there's to it. And so they see this group of rabble-rousers outside the mainstream who are literally risking their lives to preach the word. And there's many of them, millions upon millions, you know, meeting in basements under the cover of darkness, just like what happened in Rome, just like what happened in Jesus' time. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy, the same thing. And so they're going to say, I want to be part of that. And then it'll be growing, and then as it grows, there'll be more and more corruption. But, you know, corrupt people don't join outside looking in entities. Corrupt people are looking for the easiest way to meet their ambitious goals. And the easiest way is just the path of least resistance, which is join whatever the in party is now and gain power. You know what I'm saying? That's the easiest way. You don't want to be freaking a corrupt guy on the outside looking in when you can have your head sliced off. That doesn't make any sense. So then what happens, by the end of the century, Christianity will ascend to probably powerful in China, and then the circle will repeat itself. You know what I'm saying? Will it ascend so much that it'll be the dominant force in China? Probably not. Probably not. Will it ascend so much that it will be a reckoning force in China? Absolutely. And people say, yeah, but Josh, don't you know China isn't a Christian country like England was? Like Ireland was? Huh? Like Rome was? What? Come on, man. Like Russia? Come on, man. People can't think too, man. It's like China existed well before Jesus walked on this earth. You little faith. Yeah, right. The power of Jesus Christ cannot transcend barriers or boundaries, or borders, I should say. I mean, come on, man. But Josh, Confucius and the Chinese dynasties and all that, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Corruption, what matters, and then of course the fact that God is the eternal creator of all things, and His Son Jesus Christ came and died for us. And many people across the spectrum of race and religion and borders have had a personal relationship with Jesus somehow, in some way. And that will never be changed. And once you've had that personal relationship with Jesus, man, you're not going to take somebody off that. You're just not. You're going to say, that guy or that lady will forever be preaching the word. He might do it humbly. He might, do it loudly. He might do it just with a smile. He might do like the Mormons do, are always smiling. So you're like, man, I want to be part of that, because they're always happy. A lot of the Mormons I know are very, let's put it this way, they're very business oriented, if you know what I'm saying. Kind of like the Russian Baptists, man. Bunch of deer over there. Anyway, the point being is, so the corruption that comes in China will find an anecdote to it, an antidote. What did I say? Anecdote, an antidote to it. And what? In Christianity. It's inevitable. It's inevitable, because Christianity is inevitable. And then Christianity will go back the way of the pagans, that's the West, from which we came. There'll still be Christians here, but we won't be dominant. And that's good, because again, the dominant class is where corruption thrives. And Christianity should have nothing to do with corruption. And then China will take reins as the most predominant Christian nation in the world by the end of the century. I absolutely think that makes sense, and you can mark my words. We'll see you.